Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Call for Code Spot Challenge for a Smarter Planet. My name is Upkar later, and I'm a software engineer with the Call for Code team. I forgot to introduce myself. And with me today, I have Julianna Delua, platform lead for IBM Data and AI. Julianna, over to you.
Great, thank you. And thanks everyone for joining. We're excited to speak with you again today. We just announced, it's been a while, it feels like, but just last week we announced Call for Code AI Spot Challenge. You can look at that on the link here. So today is really about scoping out a winning solution and how to prepare. And then next week, we'll come back and provide you with the checklist and best practices. So you have a really good view. And in addition, you can also participate in the AI Bootcamp that we just finished it earlier the day. We had literally thousands of people that joined us. And so today's this session for about how to prepare and scope out how do you think through, right, in terms of a winning solution. So what does it mean to save a planet with AI? It's a big idea. What's unique about AI-powered solutions? So some of you might have participated in a global challenge, and you can definitely build out a great solution without AI. But what does it mean to have the AI? And in particular, what is prediction and optimization in terms of the role of that? And what can I do if I get stuck? And the submission deadline is August 18th. So we got a couple weeks to get this all sorted. And so the first question, what does it mean, right? What challenge are we facing today for safety? We have extreme weather events. In old buildings and constructions, there's public safety, crimes. All these are encroaching upon us. And the data that we can gather in terms of detecting threats or predicting potential challenges can include sensors, aerial maps, videos, some of the references. There are just a variety of data sets. And are there ways to do this better at scale and efficiently, right? So that's where you can look at increasing prediction accuracy. How do we automate processes? How do we optimize the allocation? So those are the things that you can, think through. And Upkar just, some of those successful solutions from last year or a couple of years before, you can kind of mention about how they approached those things.
Absolutely. So Juliana, I like the slide you had before. Those are all good ideas. Sometimes your ideas come from challenges you face in your everyday life, right? This was the case with Project Drone 8, which we introduced in our last YouTube session. So my colleague lives in Puerto Rico, was unable to reach his grandmother after they were hit with Hurricane Maria in 2017. And this prompted him to use a drone to try and locate her, and noticed hundreds of messages just scribbled on the ground on the streets by people who needed help, right? So that there was the winning idea was born right there. He created a visual vocabulary, a system that could use drones and visual recognition systems to recognize symbols, right, drawn by people. Reading these symbols, drone can then relay this information back to first responders and possibly save lives. That's just one example. We also mentioned another project called Isaac Simo, and this project was built around communities in Colombia that were hit by storms and earthquakes. And the solution uses visual recognition to decide how safe houses are after an earthquake, right? So just two examples that folks came up with in their daily lives, problems that they were facing. But I also came across other sources, right? So for example, the United Nations has posted a list of 17 goals to transform our world, right? When we think of saving the planet, usually you stick to the big goals like or big ideas like climate change, global warming, etc. But there are a lot of other areas that you can work on as well. So in their 17 goals, just to give you some examples, they have a goal of no poverty. They have a goal of good health and well-being, sustainable cities and communities, affordable clean energy. And then the last one that I want to mention is peace, justice, and strong institutions, right? So a lot of different ways to spark ideas. And later on a little bit, we'll talk more about data. That was what the bootcamp was about today. That's another way to spark some of these ideas.
Yeah, so it just summarizing, right? You can see some of these extreme weather events. There are people who are under threat, from like the flood, others earthquake. So you can definitely see how you transform the data sets and intelligence into potential actions, and then there are a lot of steps to get there. The second question is what's unique about AI-powered solutions. So we've already talked about that in terms of use imaging and video. You can automate some of the scaling. And another thing, obviously, once you identify these threats and people in need, how do you assess the risk? How do you prioritize them? And how do we send the right people, right equipment at the right time? And also, send AI-powered equipment that's too dangerous for humans, right? We've already seen this in terms of public safety, some of the crime prevention. But what can we do about that? Here's the list of typical industry solutions. For example, there's a use of imaging related to, healthcare, and there's a way potentially to prioritize which patients could be actually more at risk based on correlating number of images or sound, where the locations are. Another example is, cyber is also a potential threat, and it's not just cyber, it's a separate. There's always a combination of cyber and the physical threat that are lurking. So, Upkar, any examples or insights that you can share here?
Well, so going back to the question you asked, right, to begin this, the previous slide was what is unique about AI-powered solutions? And for me, the one thing that's very unique about AI-powered solutions is data, right? There is, as we said this morning in our bootcamp, there is no AI without IA. I think that holds very true. And this is a big problem and one of the big hurdles in many of the projects, machine learning projects that I work on, like especially projects that are outside of the typical IoT settings, right? So back in 2017, I think Economist published there was an article that said the world's most valuable resource is no longer oil, but data. And some people rephrase that as data is the new oil, right? That's the reality we live in. Again, if you're wondering where you can get all this data from, there are plenty of resources. I mentioned the UN website, but Julianna, you have a blog, right? You have that blog that announced the Spot Challenge. And I saw right at the end of the blog, you have a number of different resources that people can get data related to all of the different sectors and industries you just mentioned.
Yep, absolutely.
Another thing I really, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So the next thing I was going to say quickly was data is one thing, right? Now that you might have access to the data, then you really need a very strong data science platform to handle challenges such as data governance or accuracy of models, as you mentioned, validating your different assumptions regarding the data, or even visualization as being one of those methods to validate data. Again, this morning, in the longer session, we saw tools like Data Refinery, or I should say data virtualization to, first of all, collect all this data, and then using Data Refinery to refine, scale, transform, normalize this data so it's ready to pass into or send into your data models. Also want to quickly mention there are a number of, one of the rules for our competition is to use Watson Studio. And Watson Studio is a platform that brings together a lot of different machine learning AI capabilities on IBM Cloud. And this morning we touched more on the on more of the structured data, but just to point out, we do have a lot of services on IBM Cloud that deal with natural language processing and chatbots. And so I encourage everybody to take a look at that as well. It's not just about numbers, although I guess at the end of the day, everything converts into some sort of numbers that the models can then work with. But as Julianna was mentioning before, think about video, think about natural language generation, for example. That's a very hot field these days. So yeah, just a couple of ideas.
Great. And the next question, how do you use prediction and optimization? So what is prediction, right? In terms of the safety, where potential safety issues occur and what are the implications there, really understanding the risk levels. And many of you are already a great application developer. So, once you're armed with that prediction, how do you make your app smarter, right? And then just having the prediction itself is not sufficient. You wanted to use that to be able for people to take that action. Another area for AI that's really important is how do we allocate and where, and especially send resources where help is needed most. And, when you're looking at, thousands of people, or even tens of thousands of people, you do need an app to be able to enable that type of scale. And you might also want to do what-if analysis. You wanted to do some scenario planning and so forth. So here's kind of example of how we look at things, right? The first, you have to discover and predict. So what are the trends and patterns? What are the correlations? What kind of insight that we can gain from that? And then you create the hypothesis. And then prediction, we've already talked about some of the segmentation, the preventive maintenance, for example. A lot of the safety issues can occur with, the energy and utility areas, and that can lead to a potential downtime or, wildfire. There are a lot of possibilities. So you want to set the right objectives to optimize the outcome. So in order to do that, then you have to, schedule, what's the next. Or if you just go to a doctor, it's great to know what your problems are, even prescription. And so unless you have that, just knowing what kind of sickness you have is no longer sufficient. So this particular decision optimization capability is part of Watson Studio, which sits on Clapper for Data on IBM Cloud. And with your free trial, at least at the beginning, you are able to take advantage of this. And there's a number of resources once you go dive deep into the documentation that it's available publicly. Upkar, any questions or any answers that we should address here?
No, I think so. One of the questions in YouTube or coming from YouTube is, is the theme environmental or can it be anything else? And I think, Julianna, you can answer this, but we kept the theme very broad, right? So it's the AI Spot Challenge for saving the saving the planet, and the environmental is a big part of that. But I think there are other areas as well where people can take part, as we discussed in this webinar.
Yeah, I think one of the criteria that we carefully look at is your video presentation, right? Whether you pick environmental, like a climate versus other thing, it's really about, why, right? Like we mentioned about, drone aid, why that was important, really being able to speak to us about the business case. So that's very important. So this is a final, question. We can address some of the other questions here. Upkar, you want to give some rundown of what's important?
Absolutely. So if we have curated some popular questions here that folks have asked us so far. The first question I saw a couple of times in the Slack channel was around how do I submit my app? How do I register for the bootcamp, for the Spot Challenge? So again, as we explained this morning, there are two different tracks, right? So the first track, number one, is you take the 3 boot camps, you learn something out of it. We have some amazing speakers, and that's great. Track number 2 is you take those 3 boot camps, and then you register, then you submit your solution, what you come up with, to the challenge, right? So depending on which ones you're doing, Julianna's blog that I keep referring back to has all of this information written out there. So if you have any questions around where do you sign up for IBM Cloud? What Slack channel do you join? and then how do you actually submit your solution for this competition. All the information is present there. I would say the AI-Spot That Challenge channel in the Call for Code workspace. That's where we are hanging out. If you have any questions, come find us there. You can use a couple of other channels to create teams, right? So you can do this whole thing alone, no problems. But you can also create teams, and there's some advantage to that, obviously. So you can use the team building channel to look for potential teammates. You can use the help desk channel where IBMers are standing by to answer all your tough questions, including our speakers from today and the future sessions. Attend the next 2 sessions. August 10th, we talk about models. And August 17th, we talk about deploying those models at scale. So again, those are really good sessions to bring your questions around the hackathon or the Spot Challenge, or even general otherwise if you have questions around data science. And then finally, we have given out our personal work emails, our work emails that you can reach us at. So feel free to shoot questions to us. And then again, going back to, it was a little bit unclear maybe in the beginning as to what the steps are. So if you didn't attend today's bootcamp, it's okay. Go to Julianna's blog, which is listed here, and you will have a replay available of that to watch later. Make sure you sign up for August 10th and August 17th. There's just one sign up required for all 3. The step number 2 is sign up for IBM Cloud. Use the link again in Julianna's blog to sign up for IBM Cloud. Then the next step is join the Call for Code community, which will give you access to IBMers and your fellow participants of the hackathon, of the Spot Challenge. And then finally, submit your solution. So it's fairly straightforward. I know there's a number of steps, but if it's pretty linear. So if you have any questions, again, come to us at the Slack channel, and you can ask us there.
Yeah, and then actually your teammates can also answer questions. There are people who now have kind of gone deep into the process. So
That's true. That's
true. So let's just a reminder for judging.
Yeah, just a quick reminder, Julianna, you brought up a really good point when you said, it's not just about the code, right? It's also about your pitch. What business problem are you trying to solve? So we've come up with these 4 criteria for judging. Completeness and transferability, right? Is it just an abstract idea, or have you implemented some of it, or how easy it is to implement? Effectiveness, efficiency, obviously is straightforward. We also look at design and usability. It might be a great idea, but if it's not usable, then there's no point to it. And then creativity and innovation, which is a little bit subjective and abstract, but we do look at these 4 things weighted equally to see how to score your submissions. Now, there's a question: should the answer be code-oriented, or we can train AI from other apps to solve the problem? Julianna, do you want to take this?
Well, I don't think we necessarily have to be code-oriented. If you actually had a very creative idea of using AI for code, we can. We thought about AI from the context of more about prediction and optimization. But you can convince us, right, in terms of creativity and innovation. You thought about the world differently, and here's how you came up with that. So I encourage you to actually answer these questions now, because you only have a couple weeks to go. And then, have the ideas of, some of the flows and architecture to be able to, get to reach your, the finish line by August 18th.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, Julianna. We have another question. I know we are a little bit over. We said we'll finish in 15, but we're getting a lot of interesting questions. So
right, yeah.
If everybody can hang out for another couple of minutes. There's a question from YouTube. What is the final deliverable, a model or an application? And again, if you go to the submission form that Julianna pointed out before, it lists all of the different deliverables that you have to put in. So we ask for example, we ask for a GitHub repository where we can see some assets, see some code, a good README. We also ask for a video or a video pitch, a 2-minute video pitch that explains your solution, what you've built, And again, as Juliana said, it provides a vision for your solution. Juliana, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. So I mean, just came right here, ibm.biz / submit AI spot. And we provided this last week, knowing that nobody is just ready to submit just yet. But you can actually look at all the elements of the submission. And in addition to answering the questions about the judging criteria earlier, I recommend everyone just to read this. If anybody is serious, let's read this particular submission. Like you go through step by step, and then there is a participation agreement that talks about rules, details, some of the eligibility criteria. And you can submit now, and then you can update later. And obviously, there are grand prizes. I don't know if somebody is planning how to use it. Upkar, any comments here?
No, this is great. So $15,000 first prize is runner-up $5,000, second runner-up $2,500. I want to address another question that came up from YouTube, and this was, can we prepare applications on edge devices? So absolutely, the answer is yes.
Absolutely.
Edge devices are a great way to get, edge devices / IoT devices, great way to get a lot of data. So this is perfectly fine. Please go ahead. There's another one, Juliana, in India, AI courses available. So I think they're talking about the Coursera courses we talked about, or we showed this morning. So in our bootcamp, there was a slide. Again, if you didn't get a chance to download the slides while the bootcamp was going on, you will have the recording, so you can go and grab it again. But there was a slide with a number of different courses available on Coursera, and they should be available in India. I don't see why not. And I hope you go and take them.
Yeah.
All right. There's another question from YouTube. Raphael is asking, for the intelligent construction assistant, is there a GitHub repo available? So Raphael, I'm wondering if this is regarding the Isaac Simo project. If so, yes, there is a GitHub repo available. Juliana again has put it in the blog.
It's on my blog, and I have the write-up on IBM Developer blog and the Git. So again, if you're serious about winning, I really recommend you check out these two great examples, both from the code perspective as well as how they thought this through, right? How did they present the final solution, and use it against those 4 dimensions of judging criteria.
Yeah, and like Juliana said, go to the submission form right now. Even if you're not ready, it's okay. Read it. You'll find a lot of information that you would need later, and you can get ready when the time comes, right?
Yeah.
All right. I think we've answered all the questions.
Yeah. Well, thanks all for joining us. And yeah, we can continue our conversation on Slack. If you can join that IBM Global Code Slack channel using the type form, and also find some great collaborators on that Slack channel. And we look forward to hearing from you then.
Yeah, and even otherwise, come talk to us. We're a pretty friendly bunch at IBM.
Yeah.
So I hope we'll see you at the Slack channel.
Okay. Well, great. Thanks. And this concludes today's session.
Thank you.